Hi everyone, this is Alexander Lim, and welcome to AuthorStory, where every episode we speak to various authors on various topics of interest. We have a different kind of episode today because we'll be talking about a novel, 50 Shades of Hell. Our guest is Tim Miller, the author of the book, who is an extreme horror novelist, and you can check out his book by clicking on the Amazon link in the video description below. So, Tim, welcome to AuthorStory. It's great to have you here.
Hello, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So, Tim, I know you've authored something like 40 horror novels, but for the sake of our listeners who might not be familiar with your work, can you give us a short précis on of who you actually are?
Oh, well, I live in Texas,
Hmm.
and I write full time, so
Hmm.
I kind of a stay at home dad. I taxi the kids around to school and band and all that stuff when I'm not writing.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then I've been writing since about 2010,
Hmm.
and yeah, I'm actually up to about 53 books now that are in print.
Wow, 53 books, 2010. That's 53 books in 8 years.
Yeah.
Wow, fantastic. Okay, so how'd you get into writing? I mean, was this something you always wanted to do since you were a kid, or was it just something you kind of realized you had a talent for?
Yeah, I've actually been writing since I was a kid. I mean, even in first grade, I'd carry little notebooks around and write little stories and stuff and show my friends and whatever. And that's just something I did for years. And then, it's about 2010 when ebooks finally became a thing and
Yeah.
Amazon was opening doors for independent authors and stuff like that. I hadn't written actually much in a long time. I was with my ex-wife for years, and I was just really busy. I worked two or three jobs for a long time, and uh, we had our daughter, and just life got in the way.
Mm,
But then when I was going through my divorce, I was living by myself. I was under a lot of stress
right,
and
right.
actually feeling pretty depressed at times.
Uh-huh.
So I sat down and I started writing my book, The Hand of God,
Hmm.
which was about a preacher that was also a serial killer.
Okay.
Um, and it was just kind of therapeutic for me to do it. And so I sat and wrote it out and everything. And then I wasn't sure what to do with it. And
Right.
I looked at a few options. And well, at first it signed with a small publisher called Fantasy Publishing,
Hmm.
uh, and they had it out. They had it for about a year or two, and I think they were gonna do the sequel, but then another publisher bought them out,
Mm.
and I didn't get along as well with those folks.
Mm.
So after some going back and forth, they gave the rights back to me, and then I
Okay.
self-published it on my own. And then I've just been doing it. I've just been doing everything myself ever since then. I like having the control and being able to decide on the covers myself and
Okay.
all that kind of stuff. And
All right. So I take
yeah,
it then is this something like self-publishing? I mean, you don't hook up with an established publisher or anything like that. You just publish them on your own on Amazon.
yeah, I've got my own system. I work with friends of mine. I have a lot of friends that are models and actresses and stuff,
Hmm.
and so I'll communicate with them. And a lot of times they'll come up with these cool images, for cover images that either something they designed or something that they'll pose for. I've got some friends that can do Photoshop and some other designers I work with.
Right.
We'll get the cover developed, and then I have my own editor that I hire,
Right.
and I send it off to her, and she edits it. I've got some beta readers that will give me feedback on the story if something needs to be changed, if something's not working, and then once we get it all together, then I go ahead and publish it myself on Amazon.
Nice. Nice. Cool. So, who were your literary influences? I mean, well, first off, did you have any literary influences?
Yeah, I had quite a few. Growing up and like even in early adulthood, I've always read a ton. Obviously, Stephen King, that's what everybody kind of
Mm.
starts with.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
When you first get into horror.
Yeah.
One of my first real horror books I read was Clive Barker's
Mm,
Cabal,
mm,
which went on to be the movie Nightbreed.
mm,
I read that when I was like 14 or 15.
mm.
Um, so, Clive Barker was a big influence growing up. And then as I got older, I read a lot of Michael Connelly, who at the time was writing his Harry Bosch series.
Mm.
Uh, they were pretty dark, the dark crime thrillers I read. Thomas Harris, who wrote The Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal Lecter books. Um, so a lot of that kind of stuff. And then once I started dabbling in the extreme, it kind of was by accident.
Mhm.
I'd written Hand of God and the Hand of God Trilogy, and that wasn't. It's not real extreme. There's some gore, but it's not whatever.
Mhm.
Um, And then I started reading some Jack Ketchum. I read Off Season by Jack Ketchum, and to me, it was so fun to read that kind of just over the top gore.
Right.
I started reading some other stuff. I read Header by Ed Lee,
Mm-hmm.
and so I figured I'd try it myself. And I wrote the book Family Night,
Mm-hmm.
and that ended up selling better than any of my other stuff so far.
Mm-hmm.
So then I went on from there. I wrote Hell, Texas, which went on to be one of my most popular books.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just kind of, from there, just kind of got into the extreme stuff for a long time. And, was always just kind of seeing how over the top or how intense I could make the stories and stuff. And it kind of took off on its own for a little
Right.
while.
All right. Okay. Okay. So I'd like to talk a little bit about extreme horror or splatter fiction because I'm sure a lot of our listeners, they're more familiar, as you mentioned, with horror like Stephen King, sort of like the starter author
Mm-hmm.
for horror. But I'm sure some of them are not familiar with extreme horror. So what is exactly extreme horror?
Extreme horror is basically they they try to hit all the taboos. Um, a lot of stuff. A lot of times you read Stephen King, and he'll have some gore, but a lot of times it'll be like the guy took out the knife and pressed it against his chest, and then it cuts to the next scene, and he'll describe maybe the aftermath of what just happened.
Okay.
Uh, Extreme horror talks you through the play-by-play of what's going on to the human body as it's being tortured, dismembered. Um, and a lot of times in extreme horror, there's various forms of rape going on.
Mm-hmm.
Header, that the whole premise of Header is, if you read it, I don't want to give too much away, but
Mm-hmm.
is pretty rapey with all that, and it's not done from an erotic or glorification standpoint. It's pretty gross and horrific when the way they portray it and stuff. Um, I do want to make a note. I've kind of moved away a little bit from some of the extreme stuff.
Mm-hmm.
My last several books have been, I wrote a crime thriller, Brutality, recently, and then some of my other books, Ritual, and the one that just came out, Colrophobia,
Mm-hmm.
don't have as much gore. Is for a variety of reasons. Partly because I know Amazon was kind of cracking down a little bit on content, so I'm trying to play it a bit safer. Also, I just know with a lot of things happening in the world and stuff that, maybe that's not the best thing to focus on right now.
All right.
And just me evolving as a writer. When you write rednecks torturing people and dismemberment and stuff, there's kind of only so many things you can do to a human body.
All right. Right.
So I'm trying to focus in my newer stuff a little more on getting the creepy factor and the dread factor down with maybe not so much play-by-play
All right.
torture.
Okay. So where do you get your ideas for your novels? I mean, geez, like you wrote 53 books in 8 years. That comes to about what, 6 or 7 novels per year. That's a big turnaround. So where do
Yeah,
you get your ideas?
yeah, and actually, like last couple of years, I've done about 10 to 12 books a year. I can My books are fairly short; they're around 30 to 40,000 words, give or take.
Right.
So I can write a new book about every 6 weeks, give or take.
Okay.
Yeah, ideas just come from all over the place. Some things. Hell, Texas came from a road trip that I took out to West Texas several years ago, and you just get out there and it's so desolate. It's like hills have eyes, and you see these little houses up in the hills with nothing else around it and everything. So I just came with the idea of some creepy little town out in the middle of nowhere that
Right.
captures motorists and stuff. And just I watch a lot of crime documentaries. I read some true crime. I read a lot. And sometimes I'll see like an idea, and there's been times like good examples, Night of Vengeance. I really loved the movie The Purge that first came, the first one,
Yeah.
and I was a little disappointed with what they did with it and the direction they took.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote Night of Vengeance as kind of like my own version of what I thought The Purge should have been, that kind of thing. So I might do that with certain stories. Same with The Country Club. A lot of people compare that to the Hostel movie. And I like that movie, but I thought it would be kind of interesting to do something different with that concept. So I placed it in Texas, and I surrounded it with like an urban legend, and did some other things with it. So they just come from all over. My brain moves faster than I can write, so I end up a lot of times having more ideas than I'll probably ever get on paper.
Okay. Okay.
and I know a lot of times people want sequels to certain stories, or they want to see a series or whatever, and I get ideas that I'd love to go back and visit those characters, but then I have other ideas for new stuff that I want to do. So I'm just like, it's hard for me to want to go back and redo something or whatever when I've got these new ideas that I want to explore.
All right, right. Okay, okay, cool. So, I have to ask, like, in particular, because in particular with extreme horror, would you know what kind of people read those books? I mean, are these sort of like people who are bored or people looking for some sort of thrill or anything like that? Would you know?
Yeah, oddly, I get a lot, at least the people that contact me, I have a lot of stay-at-home moms or
Hmm.
daycare moms that
Okay.
contact me that love this stuff.
Ah.
I don't know if it's because they just have a lot of stress, so it's a good escape reading horrible things happening to people.
All right, right.
Uh, but I've had people of all walks of life that have read it. Occasionally, and this is kind of another reason why I've kind of veered away from it,
Hmm.
is there is kind of a scary group of people that is into this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had like readers, like, and some of these were like men that will email me and tell me about their own fantasies about raping women
Mm.
and stuff like that. And I'm just kind of like, because I don't actually get off on writing this stuff. I
Right.
sometimes will sit and giggle thinking about, oh, this is really gross. I'm going to do this. Ha ha.
Okay.
But apparently there's people that actually like really get off, which I guess that's their business, whatever. I don't need, but I also don't need to know about it. And I
Yeah.
don't want to know how you fantasize about tying your coworker up and doing things to her. And I sometimes get those emails or messages on Facebook, and I'm just kind of like, I,
Yeah. That's a little bit creepy.
yeah. And I've noticed since I've done these last few books where I've kind of moved away from the really tortury, rapey stuff, and have just spent more. It's been more supernatural horror, like Rituals about a satanic cult,
Hmm.
Brutalities about a serial killer, Coulrophobia is about this kind of creepy clown that haunts this lady's dreams and stuff like that.
Right, right.
Um, so I noticed I haven't been getting some of the really weird messages that I was getting there for a long time. So that's a nice change.
Okay, okay. Hopefully things will get a little less creepy.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, I have to ask about 50 Shades of Hell. I mean, since we're on the topic, I mean, there's a popular 50 Shades of, series going on.
Yeah, yeah.
Is 50 Shades felt like a spoof of this kind of thing?
I mean, a little bit. Originally, the title was going to be called Dead Girl,
Okay.
because the guy, I don't know if you've read the book or anything, um, but the guy, they move into this house. It's haunted by the ghost of the girl that had been murdered there years ago,
Hmm.
and they actually form a sexual relationship, and then he gets drawn into this dark underworld where he has to go through all these horrible trials to win his dead girl over.
Right.
Um, I had kind of done some testing with like my beta readers, and when I was posting some, the cover on Facebook and things like that,
Hmm. Hmm.
it was getting kind of a flat response. So
Okay.
I thought maybe the cover was, I really like the cover. That's my friend Dominique Sky on the cover,
Hmm.
and she always does a great job when she does cover photos. So I thought maybe the title was kind of flat. So
Hmm.
I thought I'd spruce it up a little bit, because when you look at the story, after I wrote the story out and read kind of, I was kind of reading over it, and I was kind of thinking, this is a little bit like Hellraiser and a little bit like 50 Shades of Grey in kind of
Right.
a twisted sort of way.
Right.
So maybe we'll call it 50 Shades of Hell, give it
Oh, okay.
a more catchy name. And yeah, right away, interest peaked immediately once I changed that title.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Have you done similar? I mean, have you done similar like title? I don't know how to put title associations with some of your other books. Just to make it more interesting.
Um, I don't know about associations. I've done different things to try to give it provocative titles.
Mm-hmm.
I had one book out called Rape Van,
Mm-hmm.
about a group of serial killers that was traveling in a van.
Hmm.
Now, once again, because when I had some trouble with Amazon and content, I went
Hmm.
ahead and changed the title to just The Van
Okay. Okay.
instead of Rape Van.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know if I needed to or not, but I was just trying to be on the safe side, because I had a couple books that got. I had a book about a year ago called Snuff Film that they banned for a while,
Mm.
um, because of content. After kind of working with them for a little bit and emailing back and forth, they went ahead and unbanned it.
Hmm.
And I think the original reason it was banned was because of the cover. It was a girl that was in her bra and panties that was bound and gagged in the back of a trunk, and she had blood all over her. I think the cover might have been a little too much for them. They don't really tell you why they banned it,
Okay.
but once they unbanned it, I changed the cover and put it back up, and it hasn't had any problems since. I just changed it to a black cover with like a content warning on it. So,
Okay.
but yeah, so yeah, I just try to come up with. Sometimes, then that's where I get the story ideas from. Sometimes the title pops in my head before, but I just try to think of what's going to be a catchy title, something that rolls off the tongue,
Right.
and it's going to stick in people's minds. And so far, I usually I think I do pretty good with it most times.
Right. 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 Okay, so let me shift a little bit because I mean, you have worked with Amazon since the start. I mean, I'm sure you've experienced what it's like to work with Amazon over the years. If it's, I'm sure it's developed and stuff like that. What's
Hmm.
it like being self-publishing? You know, because most people think, you know, if I write a novel, I write a book, I got to go with an established publisher, and you seem to be doing pretty well without an established publisher. I mean, publishing direct to Amazon.
Well, having done both, because I looked into getting a big publisher, and for one, to do that is really tough.
Hmm.
Um, you first off to get a major publisher, you have to find an agent. That alone
Okay.
is finding a reputable agent. Just that in itself is hard. There's a lot of people out there that call themselves agents that are just they're out to rip off others off.
Okay.
Um, so you have to find yourself a reputable agent, and that's tough because I mean, they get thousands and thousands of books submitted to them all the time,
Right,
and
right.
then once you find an agent, he's got to sell the book to a publisher that's willing to get it.
Hmm.
Uh, if they sell it to a major publisher, you might get an advance of a few $1,000s.
Hmm.
They have control over the uh, cover of the book.
Hmm.
They have editorial control over stuff that you're supposed to take out or change it to or whatever,
Hmm.
and then they publish it. And a lot of times they don't even market it that much.
Hmm.
They're expecting you to use your advance that they gave you to
Hmm.
promote and market the book. And then you don't even make any money from the publisher until you've earned out that advance. And
Hmm.
and I've known a lot of authors that waited years to get their book published. They finally got a big publisher,
Hmm.
but then they didn't earn out their advance, and they never get another book signed again.
Hmm.
Um, Self-publishing, if you're of a business mindset, if you're somewhat business savvy, which I really was not. I've learned all this on my own on the fly.
Hmm.
Uh, you have complete control over your own cover,
Hmm.
which, I mean, the cover is really important. People say they don't judge a book by its cover, but that's a lie. That's your packaging.
Right.
That's the first thing people see. So it has to be something that's going to catch people's eye.
Mm.
I see a lot of authors just slapping a crappy stock photo, or they do something in MS Paint or whatever. It looks like a 12-year-old did it,
Right.
and then they throw it up there and wonder why no one wants their book.
Right.
Um, you got to handle your own editing. So you just because you're self-publishing doesn't mean the book can be any less professional. You have to go those steps to give it a good professional presentation, clean up, errors, typos, things like that.
Mm.
Um, we still tend to have a few more than the big publishers because we don't have teams of editors. I have, 2 or 3 people that go over it. Then I go over it myself. Then I have a software program.
Hmm.
Stuff slips through. I really try to keep it as clean as I can, but it happens. Um, but the biggest thing, the thing I like having the creative control. I don't mind promoting and marketing. A good chunk of my day, I spend probably more time marketing and promoting than I do uh, actually writing,
Hmm.
which I don't mind. It's just the way my brain works. I put out about 1,000, 2,000 words a day.
All right.
Um, I've built up a big Twitter following over the years, and I'm still working on developing it. So I do a lot of promo on Twitter.
Wow.
Uh, I do some on Facebook, but it's a little bit harder. But and Facebook, you can't really flood it. If you spam Facebook too much, then people get pissed.
All right. All right.
Twitter, Twitter, you can post a promo post about every hour, every couple hours,
Hmm.
and people don't mind because it's a chronological news feed, so stuff is moving pretty quickly for most people.
Okay.
But the biggest thing is if you're writing as a business and you want to do this for a living and make money,
Hmm.
when you publish directly with Amazon, they pay you 70% royalty on your retail price.
Hmm.
So if the book is $2.99,
All right.
you're getting about $2 per sale.
Okay.
Um, the trouble with small publishers, and that's what a lot of new authors do, is they sign with these small publishers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm nothing against small publishers. I know some friends that run small publishing companies, and they do pretty good for themselves or whatever. But my own experience with them and other authors that I've seen this has happened to many times.
Mm-hmm.
Most small presses are only run by one or two people.
Mm-hmm.
They don't realize the capital it's going to take to keep it going.
Right. Right.
They don't do that much marketing or promotion for you.
Mm-hmm.
So they put the book out there, and then they take 20 or 30% of your royalties.
Mm-hmm.
So that 70% Amazon is paying them. They're only giving you about $1 of that, or maybe 75 cents of that.
Okay.
So they're not really doing anything that you can't already do for yourself. Mm-hmm. And all they're really doing is taking a chunk of your income. Mm-hmm. And then when I had the small publisher, my problem was when I had to order books for signings, mm-hmm. they charged me a much higher rate for my own books than it cost me to get from Amazon when I ordered directly from them.
Oh.
It would take forever to get them because you're basically at the mercy of the one or two people to order your books or whatever it is that you need from them, marketing materials, whatever.
Right.
They're inundated with, 20, 30 authors they're dealing with. So you're kind of at the mercy of their schedule. When they get to you, they get. Whereas right now, I handle everything myself. Mm-hmm. Same when it comes to sales reports. I don't really like to trust people with my money. Mm-hmm. So I like being able to pull up Amazon and seeing exactly what my sales reports are real time, mm-hmm. not have to email somebody and wait 3 days for them to come back and send me their spreadsheet of what they say my sales are.
Right. So,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying because I've seen this happen with small presses. I know, like I said, a lot of them are reputable. Mm-hmm. A lot of them do the right things, but I've seen numerous ones where authors don't get royalty checks. Mm-hmm. They can't get their sales reports. Mm-hmm. Or in some cases, the publisher just goes out of business and their book's still up on Amazon under the publisher's name. Right. And so the author's stuck. They can't get their rights back. They can't republish their book and they can't get paid for their work.
Oh, okay.
For me, maybe I just have trust issues, but, I would just rather keep my stuff under my own control.
Yeah, it does have a financial impact. If you can't republish your book, your book's dead.
Yeah, exactly.
It's dead. Okay, so I just found a little something interesting because you mentioned money, essentially percentages, money numbers. So you mm-hmm. mentioned like you get 70% from Amazon, and if you go with a small publisher, you only get about half that. Say you go with a big publisher, about how much would you get?
See, with a big publisher, because the major publishers have their own special deals with Amazon as to what their payouts are. Mm-hmm. So that really just depends on your contract with that publisher. Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing that I've seen and this goes back to, I've seen it with small presses, but I've seen it with big publishers where authors, they get so excited that they get a publishing deal, they don't really read the contract and then they sign it. Mm-hmm. And then say the big publisher decides, okay, we're not going to publish your next book, we're going to drop you after this, mm-hmm. but they keep the rights to your current book. So, or if it's a series, I've seen authors that do that. They wrote 2 or 3 books on a series. Mm-hmm. It didn't do very well, so the big publisher says, well, we're not going to do a 4th book, but we're keeping the rights to these 3. Mm-hmm. So they've got readers that want to read more in that series, but the author can't continue the series on their own because they don't own the rights to it anymore.
Right.
So I emphasize, I see people bashing a lot of publishers, even small publishers, mm-hmm. for having bad contracts. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm unsympathetic or whatever, but I kind of put that on the author. It is your responsibility to read that contract, and if you don't understand it, contact an attorney, have them read it over.
Right.
And if you want to negotiate, because you can do that, send back to the publisher, say, hey, can you take this out? Can you take that out? If you're not comfortable with something in that contract, don't sign it. Sign that contract. No matter how bad you want your book out there, and then you sign your rights away. I had one small press that contacted me, and I looked the contract over, and they were offering an advance, and it looked interesting. But I noticed they wanted They also wanted movie rights.
All right.
Now, none of my books have been made into movies, but I asked them. I said, "Are you going to shop my book around? Are you going to shop this around and actively seek movie rights?" Mm-hmm. And they said, "Well, no, we don't do that. But if that opportunity does come up, we do get the rights to that."
All right.
So they weren't going to do anything to try to get a movie made from it. But if that happens, they want to be the ones to cash in. So I was like, "Yeah, no, not doing that."
Right. Okay. All right. Got that. Okay, so Tim, let's say you come across someone. He's a budding author, hasn't written a book yet. He's got either got an idea for a book or he's about ready to publish his book, and he's thinking about going, say, self-publishing route or publisher. He's not quite sure yet. Uh, and you want to tell him one thing about, doing the publishing part and maybe even the marketing part. What would be that thing that you would tell him?
Well, the first thing I always tell folks when they come to me, because I have folks when I do conventions, they come to me with that exact scenario.
Hmm.
I tell them the first thing is write the book, get the book
Okay,
on paper.
right.
Don't even sweat what you're going to do with it until you actually get it down. Because I've seen authors that they spin their wheels for years trying to figure out what they want to do with it before they even have a single page written.
Mm,
But you get the book down. But I just tell them, just look at, and this is another thing too. I didn't mention this, but I'll touch on this.
okay,
There's so self-publishing, a lot of the stigma and negativity that used to be around it has gone away,
okay,
um, but there's still some there. So
okay.
I tell someone, like, what are your goals as an author? Do you
Hmm.
want to get awards and recognition and maybe be critically acclaimed, or do you want to do this for a living?
Hmm.
Um, if you're a horror writer and you want to win a Stoker Award and you want to get, into writing journals and you want to have peer recognition,
Hmm.
then, you know, there's a lot of small reputable publishers out there that can do that for you. And I suggest that. Now, you might not make any money doing it, but you're going to get, you know,
Recognition.
into, you're going to get into the inner circles of like the industry and things like that if that's what you want. If you want to make a living and make money at it, then I would say self-publish and just work hard on promoting, and not just blasting over Facebook repeatedly, but look at different outlets, various social media. I'm on Instagram, I'm on
Hmm.
Twitter. I do appearances at conventions throughout the year.
Hmm.
All those things. Getting your name out there. And I will admit, my advice might not be the best because it's a lot harder now. When I first started on Facebook back years ago, it wasn't a public, it wasn't an IPO. Zuckerberg still owned it.
Hmm.
They didn't have the algorithms and they weren't running ads and all the stuff. So you could post something on Facebook and everybody on your page would see it.
Hmm.
You know, now that they're hobbling the reach and it's harder to get your name out there and there's more people trying to promote stuff. So it's a little bit harder. So I don't know the best advice for getting started because I do have a platform now, but
All right.
that's generally what I tell folks is the key is to promote, get your name out there. If you have to buy ads, I buy Amazon ads.
Hmm.
That has been helpful for me.
Hmm.
Buying Facebook ads for a long time that was helpful, but now I noticed last few I bought weren't real helpful.
Hmm.
I think saturation is a big part of it.
All right.
So,
All right.
and that's the thing that's happened as far as income. I used to make a lot more money as an author than I do now.
Mm.
Part of that I think is just due to saturation. There's several times more books being published a year now than there were a few years ago.
All right.
So that just bumps everybody down in the equation. So you just have to work that much harder to get your name out there.
All right. Okay. Cool. I got that. Okay. Cool. So a bit on the lighter side. You've got a sidekick, Sancho the Chihuahua.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Does he review any of your books? Does he make suggestions? Anything like that?
Well, he just kind of oversees things and looks things over. It's kind of funny how he showed up.
Uh-huh.
I was out taking the trash out one day, and he just walked up to me and just stood there looking at me.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I thought maybe he belonged to a neighbor or somebody. And I start walking inside, and he's following me.
Okay.
So I was like, "Where did you come from?" And he's just
Uh-huh.
kind of standing there. And usually we have a lot of stray dogs in our neighborhood, and
Uh-huh.
usually they're pretty skittish.
Mm-hmm.
I walked over to him, and he didn't run away like they usually do. He just let me pick him right up.
All right.
Uh, I went around to the neighbors, checked with everybody. Nobody had ever seen him before.
All right.
He's only got a couple teeth, so we
Okay.
knew right away he was an older dog.
Right.
I checked Craigslist. I checked all over. I took him in, had him checked for microchip. He has no microchip, so
Mm-hmm.
we just kind of took him in. I'd had some health issues a few months before, and one of my friends said maybe he's my spirit animal that came to look over me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he just kind of hangs out and oversees things, and yeah,
Okay.
he's just kind of my little buddy.
Okay. So, what's he think of this shift you're presently making from like extreme horror? Does he approve of it? Does he disapprove
Oh
of
yeah,
it?
he seems to approve. He
Okay, that's good. That's good.
yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool. So, Tim, in the last minute or so of this interview, are there any last words of wisdom you'd like to share to maybe inspire our listeners?
Well, like I said, if you want to be a writer, the biggest thing I can tell people is that the most important thing, if you want to be a writer, is to write.
Okay.
Um, Even if it's crap. I mean, I know some people that go, well, I started on this sucks. Well, just sometimes you have to write the crap to get to the good stuff. And I mean, I've trashed numerous stories. I've gotten 15, 20,000 words into a story, and I just completely trashed it because I just wasn't happy with where it was going.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, if you want to be a writer, the key is to just write, and all the other stuff is all the other stuff can be easily learned and picked up, and you just have to go from there. But that's the biggest thing, is to write if you want to write.
Okay, cool. Got that. Okay, so great words of wisdom right there. Just right. All right, so in closing, then, the book is 50 Shades of Hell, as well as 52 others. The author's our guest, Tim Miller, very prolific guy, and you can get his books all on Amazon. So, Tim, thanks very much for being an author story. I must say, it was very insightful getting your point of view as a self-published author.
All right. Well, thank you for having me.
Welcome. So, everyone, I invite you all who might want a good scare and a few sleepless nights to check out 50 Shades of Hell. And of course, please feel free to subscribe to our channel. So, catch you all next time, folks, on Author Story Weekly Interviews with another amazing author.